The rope bit into the weathered wood of the fence and sang in the wind, a thin, trembling note that cut through the dusk. When the rancher rode in from the south pasture and saw the woman tied there, dark hair loose, shoulders squared despite the bruises on her wrists, she lifted her chin and said, "Steady as stone, do whatever you want, cowboy." It wasn't a challenge. It was surrender sharpened by pride. Ethan Calloway reined in hard. Dust plumed around his horse's hooves as the words hit him. He had known cruelty in his life, the quiet kind that came with drought and debt, the loud kind that came with gunfire on the borderlands, but he had never known it to look like this. A woman bound to his fence as if she were a warning sign, as if she belonged to no one and therefore could be handled by anyone. He dismounted slowly, hands open, careful not to startle her. "Who did this?" he asked. She smiled without humor. "Men who don't answer questions." The sun was slipping, turning the hills the color of embers. Ethan cut the rope with a quick slice, then stepped back, giving her space. She rubbed her wrists, eyes never leaving his face, measuring him. The fence post creaked as if relieved. "I won't hurt you," he said, as much to himself as to her. "My name's Ethan." She nodded once. "Nieli." The name fell from her mouth like a promise she wasn't sure she should make. He offered water. She drank carefully, the way someone does when they've learned to expect tricks. He offered a blanket. She took it, wrapping herself tightly, and only then did she allow her shoulders to sag. They walked to the house in silence. The ranch was lonely in the way old things are lonely, not from lack of life but from too much time holding onto it. Ethan's wife had been buried on the hill 3 years earlier, and the room still knew her footsteps. He had learned to move quietly, to make room for ghosts without feeding them. Nieli sat at the table, hands folded. The lamplight painted her face in warm shadows, revealing the lines of endurance there. "You can ask," she said. "I might answer." "Why my fence?" he asked. "Because it was there," she said. Then, after a beat, "Because your brand isn't the one that burns villages." Ethan swallowed. He had heard stories. He had seen men do terrible things and call it survival. He had also seen women pay the price. He made stew. He listened. Nieli told him about a winter that took her mother, about brothers who scattered like quail when the soldiers came, about walking until her feet bled because stopping meant being found. She spoke without tears, but the pauses told him where they might have fallen if she allowed them. Night deepened. Coyotes sang. Ethan showed her the spare room, then stopped at the threshold. "You're safe here," he said. "As long as you want to be." She studied him, weighing his words like grain. "Men say that," she said softly. "And then they decide it means something else." Ethan nodded. "Then let my silence prove it." For days, she stayed. She helped in the garden, learned the horses' names, laughed once, an abrupt sound that startled them both. Ethan watched from a distance, a careful steward of trust. He noticed how she flinched at sudden movements, how she slept light, how she stood tall when men from neighboring ranches rode by. Trouble came riding in on a morning wind. 3 men with rifles and red eyes, claiming Nieli belonged to them by right of capture. Ethan stood between them and his porch, a line drawn not by bravado but by resolve. "She doesn't belong to anyone," he said. Nieli stepped forward, voice steady. "I choose where I stand." The men laughed. Ethan didn't. He had lived long enough to know when laughter was the last refuge of cowards. He told them to leave. When they didn't, he fired into the dirt at their feet, not to wound, but to warn. It worked. Fear is a language all men understand. After they were gone, Nieli's hands shook. Ethan didn't touch her. He waited until she spoke. "You could have let them take me," she said. "I could have," he agreed. "I won't." The days turned. Trust grew like grass after rain, slow, stubborn, undeniable. Nieli told him more, and Ethan told her about the woman on the hill, about the nights he had thought the world had closed its hand around him and squeezed. One evening, Nieli stood at the fence where she had been tied. She touched the post, then the horizon beyond it. "When I said those words," she said, "I was trying to make myself small enough to survive." Ethan stood beside her. "You don't have to be small here." She smiled then, not sharp but warm. "Then I will be large," she said, and the land seemed to breathe with her. In time, Nieli chose to stay, not as a debt, not as a rescue, but as a partnership. She taught Ethan the names of plants that heal, and he taught her how to read the weather in the clouds. They worked, argued, laughed. The ranch grew kinder. The fence remained, weathered and quiet, no longer a place of binding but a boundary freely crossed. And when the wind sang through it at dusk, it sounded less like a warning and more like a song, of dignity reclaimed, of choices honored, of two people who refused to let cruelty have the last word.